Welcome, everybody. So glad that you could join us today for Activating Building Decarbonization in New York. We're going to learn about all of the exciting, or not all of, because there's so many, but some of the exciting opportunities for funding and advocacy. I'm really thrilled to be here with these wonderful speakers and my friend Ibrahim. I'm Betta Broad, the campaign director for New Yorkers for Clean Power, and also wearing my AEA hat as well, the director of advocacy and organizing at the Association for Energy Affordability. And really, delighted to get to work with so many of the amazing people that are on today. Great to see you all. And I'll just pass it over to you, Ibrahim, to say hello and introduce yourself.
So good morning, everyone. Ibrahim Abdul Mateen. I am the author of a book called Green Deen, What Islam Teaches About Protecting the Planet. And I obsess and think about water and energy and transportation and waste and food and how we manage all of these difficult things. Cal says, it's a good book. That's what's up. Thank you, Cal, for the shout out for Green Deen. I do always tell people, if you meet an author, you should buy their book. And that doesn't mean you have to read
and have
the
them
book.
sign it.
Well, that would be even better. But even if you don't read the book, you should give the book to someone else that might read it or might enjoy it, because at some point you might write a book, and you would expect and hope that people would also purchase your book and support you. I also worked in the Bloomberg and de Blasio administrations on infrastructure policy. I worked at DEP. I was the director of community affairs for a little while, and now I have a small practice called Green Squash Consulting, where I work on these issues with lots of different stakeholders and lots of different partners. I try and do my best to be part of the good fight that we're all in. So it's an honor to be here in this conversation. And I'm going to help keep things moving and keep the conversation flowing. The speakers are going to be able to sort of jump in and respond to things and hopefully have a little bit of a back and forth, more iterative. But obviously everyone has a point of view, and that's what we're really here to learn from. So hopefully this is going to bring a lot of value to you guys and your work.
Thanks so much, Ibrahim. Always thrilled when you can join us. And we've been so happy to have you as a senior Clean Power Fellow for the past year or so, and just being in this movement together with you for over a decade now.
Right.
It's wonderful to get to work with you on these important issues. And great to be joined by so many people today. So welcome, everybody. We'll get started since it's 12:05 and we only have an hour. This maybe is lunch break for some of you, but wherever you're zooming in from, thank you for spending your time. I know everyone is super busy, and really appreciate you joining us today and being a part of this movement for equitable building decarbonization. We have some amazing speakers today, and we're going to start off with Bryk, who is, among other things, Dale wears more hats even than I do, but today she's going to be representing as the Director of State and Regional Policies at Harvard Environmental and Energy Law Program, and also the Senior Fellow at the Regional Plan Association, RPA. And Dale's going to be talking about how New York could maximize the IRA's $27 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund for equitable building decarbonization. Dale has been doing absolutely incredible work on this and submitted some comments on Monday that we can share around on the fund. She's the perfect person to give us the inside scoop on what's happening with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and how we can hopefully tap into that $27 billion to achieve our shared goals. So Dale, thank you so much for being here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Hold on real quick. I'll say this real quick. I got my notebook. I got my pen. This is a teach-in. Y'all should get your work together. Get your stuff out. Get ready to take some notes.
Well, good point, Ibrahim. And also I should say before that people, please feel free to put your questions in the chat or save them, and then we can call on you after all the presenters so you can ask your questions, and questions we don't get to, we will capture in a Google Doc. we'll get the answers to those questions, and we'll circulate them to everybody later. So that's something important that we always do, and want to just express how much we appreciate people asking questions and being a part of this. We want it to be as interactive as possible. So thanks again. Dale, over to you.
Excellent. And you don't have to try to scribble what's coming on the slides, because we can share the slides as well. And some of the ones that I'm going to show you are, there's quite a lot going on. So let's see. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of context with the IRA generally, then spend most of this presentation on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the basic info that you need to know, some deployment scenarios. These are just scenarios because we don't know what's going to happen. And then talk about a few things we can be thinking about here in New York. I think Bryn's going to put in the chat links to two different tables that are much more comprehensive than this one. So you can see the full suite of provisions within the IRA that can support buildings. And then I have another table, it's a full suite of the provisions that can support disadvantaged communities. There's a lot of overlap there. And my colleague Hannah Pearls at Harvard put those together, and they're really great references. But just for the context of this conversation, these are the biggest ticket items. We're well into the billions here. So 27 billion is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. There are also climate pollution reduction grants that are only to states, cities, and tribes. That's also competitive. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is a competitive solicitation. There are EJ block grants, 3 billion, code implementation, low carbon building materials. And then I think Amar's going to talk about the rebates, the money that we can get directly as people, but the other money is all flowing through others. So this is just kind of for context. There's a lot of money out there, and even more than shown on this chart. So what's the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund? The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is this $27 billion pot of money that's going to be administered by EPA. They're on a very tight timetable. They have to start doing something this February, and they have only 18 months to get all of the money out the door. And not for nothing, they were only given $30 million, which is not that much, to administer this entire program across the country. People have been referring to this as like a green bank or a national green bank, and lending is certainly a cornerstone, but the language allows financial assistance broadly defined. So it can include money for grants, and it can definitely include money for technical assistance or support that's needed to enable communities to take advantage of this money. There's different language, but it's basically zero emission and greenhouse gas and air pollution reducing technologies. So one tranche flows to cities, states, and tribes. That's $7 billion. All of that money has to support low income and disadvantaged communities. There's another tranche for $8 billion going through nonprofit lenders. I can talk about who they are. Also must go to low income and disadvantaged communities. And then there's 12 billion. They shaved off that 30 million for EPA administration. That goes to nonprofit lenders and is not required to go to low income and disadvantaged communities, but there are quite a large number of stakeholders who weighed in with EPA to say, really, this full suite of money should at least prioritize low income and disadvantaged communities. So this is just process. EPA issued an RFI, or request for information. The comments were due on Monday. If you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see the link to our the comments that I mentioned that we just submitted from Harvard on behalf of actually other people on this call, so affordable housing and energy expert people. There's also something called the Environmental Finance Advisory Board. They were charged with giving EPA recommendations. And they had a bunch of listening sessions. So there has been a public process to influence this, which is kind of over because the comments were due to both of those on December 5th. They had the listening sessions already. And now December 15th, EFAB will give their comments to EPA. And then, there's a time period here through next September of 2024 where EPA, I think this is likely to be iterative, will be issuing basically RFPs. They call them NOFAs, Notice of Financing Availability or Funding Availability. And then people will submit proposals and EPA will select winners. So over that period of time, we'll see what EPA comes out with as the rules that are going to govern anybody's proposals, and then the proposals that people are putting in. And certainly New York State and maybe the city as well as lots of other players who are in our ecosystem will be applying for that money. So the next thing for us really is to shape what those proposals look like, regardless of what EPA's rules are. And my educated guess is that not a huge amount of money is going to flow before the end of this year, just because EPA I think wants to take a very considered view in how they do this. And even though there's the legislation is a bit rushing them. These are some of the issues that were in the questions that EPA put out, and just sort of in the conversation of the people who have been working on this and talking about this with EPA and the White House and putting comments in. And I just want to pluck a few of them out because they're very relevant to advocacy that this group might want to be doing in New York, telling state, city, and private players how they should be thinking about sort of the rules around spending this money. So one is, it has to benefit disadvantaged communities. What does that really mean? What do impacts look like to people's lives, like improving their homes and giving them heat pumps versus upgrading a city bank that happens to be in the zip code of a disadvantaged community. So what do those impacts look like? I mentioned prioritizing the full portfolio of money for disadvantaged communities, or at least LMI. Program design is very important because of the potential role of green banks and how especially the New York Green Bank has operated to date. So there's language in the statute about leveraging the money, recycling the money. If you loan it, then people pay it back. You can loan it again. And additionality, like let's just not use this money to, make it cheaper for developers who are already going to do projects anyway, or can already get financing anyway, and we're just going to give them cheaper financing so it's more profitable for them. How do we make sure that we're using this money to complement all the other money that's out there, and also the policies that are out there driving other investment? And these things are in tension, because the more that you're trying to get at something that's hard, like say making affordable housing super energy efficient and electric, the more you need to use grant money, the lower the rate of any lending has to be. And then that makes it difficult to attract additional private investment because they want to go where they can make the most money. So, as I mentioned, historically, New York Green Bank has not invested in disadvantaged communities, and they've been very focused on showing that you can make money in these markets and recycling the revenue. So, it's really important that we get this balance right, and that New York gets this balance right if we're going to spend this money well and get all the benefits that we want. There's a lot of conversation about who's going to go after this money. Some of the performance metrics I mentioned already. I mean, this is all up for grabs. It's not dictated by the legislation. And the last one I'll pluck out is this technical assistance, because we do have the regional hubs in New York. We have NYCERDA. How are those players going to be involved to make sure that we have a steady flow of high quality projects to invest in, and the money's just not sitting on somebody's desk, not getting out the door? Okay, what should we invest in? When you think about each sector of the economy, power, transportation, buildings, and industry, we generally know what the solutions are. And we also know what the barriers are to those solutions. And it's not always money. So just having money doesn't mean you should spend it on the biggest ticket items like utility scale renewables or transmission or building out the EV charging infrastructure, because we have plenty of other money for some of these things. And the issue might be siting. The issue might be, that coal plant. I mean, this is the case in New York. Is like, it's about jobs or being part of the tax base of the locality, and giving them money isn't really going to solve the problem. So this is just kind of a framework that we think leads you to conclude you should be overwhelmingly targeting this money in disadvantaged communities across the board, but especially in buildings, because like I said, there's lots of other money for EVs. Maybe people need help accessing it. There's lots of money for solar, but maybe it's very difficult to get it on affordable housing, especially if the roof is caving in. So let's just be very thoughtful in how we're prioritizing technologies. This is just a scenario of how money could flow so that people could think about, hey, if the money came, can you see my cursor? If the money came, through New York State, can it go to HCR and support, the Climate Friendly Homes program? Can it go to NYCP and support workforce development? If it went to the New York Green Bank or the New York City Energy Efficiency Finance Corporation, which actually is focused on affordable housing, how do we make sure that that's going to the end use that we need? We have revolving funds here, and there's a live conversation in New York. They've been historically used for water. How could we use them for energy? And of course, we have existing weatherization and utility programs. Can this scale up those programs? So there's a lot going on here, and these are, just opportunities for stakeholders to advocate how the flow of money should go and make it coherent within the state, so it's not sort of a free-for-all, where we have a plan and we're not duplicating efforts, we're leveraging them. This is the other money that's not going to states and cities, that's going to nonprofit lenders. And these are the kinds of lenders that people are thinking of. Community development finance organizations, credit unions, green banks, the mortgage market, and the all-important technical assistance. And this is just sort of an example of how this money would flow nationally down to like your local credit union and CDFI, and then to the actual end users is what we really care about. And how do the different lenders meet up with the technical assistance that's needed to drive demand for these projects is like a critical question. And I think where there's a lot of work to do, but where we have a head start in New York, because we do have the hubs and many of these conversations are underway, and we even have some great programs to build on. But we're not there yet. One thing, sorry, I forgot to mention about this money when I was talking about the flexibility of it, and that we should use it, intentionally, knowing what the other money is earmarked for, that relates to affordable housing and efficiency and electrification, is all of the pre-weatherization costs, the roof, the mold, getting a building in condition so that you can then invest energy dollars in it, efficiency, and electrification dollars, because often you cannot use dollars like in a utility program for that purpose. And then that's just missing money that takes all of those buildings out of contention for getting these resources, because the language of the statute says enabling communities. I'm doing quotes, but that's actually not the word, whatever, the money can be used to assist communities so that they can access the benefits here. There is room, I think, for, and many other people think, for attacking that barrier in particular, and especially with our 2 million homes commitment, we should be thinking about that. This is just an example, and I know Atalia is going to talk climate friendly homes, so I'm not going to get into it, but this is the, money could flow to support exactly this kind of thing. There's something similar in Vermont. Not too many other states are doing this, but everybody has a housing finance authority. Should we be getting more money to these programs? What is this not covering? How do we build complementary programs to get the other parts of the market that climate friendly homes aren't covering? This money could definitely be used for that. And this is just sort of illustrating the challenge on the ground that I mentioned. If you have technical assistance providers, which in New York can be NYCP and our regional clean energy hubs, how are they working with all of these different lenders who might be great at lending money in disadvantaged communities, but they don't know anything about energy efficiency, or they don't know anything about electric vehicles? And then how do you make sure we have the workers, contractors, we understand which technologies are functioning. We need like cold climate heat pumps. And this is, I think, the most important piece. who's really working with communities to understand what's needed, to help develop real projects, and to make, we talk about like the easy button. It's like, just come here. There are real people. It's not just a website, to help make it as easy as possible to tap into all the resources, this just being one of them, to make real projects happen and to make sure that communities are fully benefiting from the whole suite of opportunities, both on the investment side and on the job opportunity side. And I think that's the end for me.
Great, thank you so much. That was awesome. That was a super thorough, and I'm sure everyone's still taking notes. I know you said we're going to send out the thing, but we're still taking a lot of notes. I'm going to make a shift now. We're going to bring in Brother Amar Shah. You're going to talk about the incentives, talk about the rebates, give us a little bit more detail, and you can just briefly share your role at Rocky Mountain Institute and the context here.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, and super informative presentation, taking notes over here. Dale, my name is Amar Shah. I'm a manager with the Carbon-Free Buildings team at the Rocky Mountain Institute. And today I am talking briefly about the tax credits and rebates in the Inflation Reduction Act. So I felt a sense, sort of pangs of pain by not covering the many other kind of funding sources and resources. So I appreciate that Dale covered them right off the bat. The two big buckets that I'll be talking through are, so first of all, in terms of the funding opportunity, Dale spoke to this 35 billion plus, like a couple of the big chunks within that are eligible across the built environment and the building sector, and potentially other interventions around decarbonization. In terms of direct funding to buildings in the Inflation Reduction Act, a huge component of this is tax credits, which will be effective essentially January 1st of 2023. We'll talk a little bit about the Congressional Budget Office score for the tax credits of $37 billion. But as you can see, that's a significant implied funding source for decarbonization in the built environment, as well as the rebates. I'm going to focus on those two major buckets, recognizing that there's a number of other fairly sizable funding opportunities as well. As we talk about tax credits, I've just listed four here. Several types of tax credits have been enhanced or extended in the IRA. One of which is a residential energy efficiency tax credit. That was historically, there was a lifetime cap, I believe, of about $1,200 for energy efficiency upgrades. That has been enhanced to be an annual cap to allow households to take advantage of measures over time, as well as there's been the addition of a new tax credit for heat pumps that essentially caps out at $2,000. So that's significantly greater than it was before, effective January 1st, 2023. The sort of 25D, so the investment tax credit that we know and love for solar and for battery storage, also covers ground source heat pumps, which I know will get a lot of attention and focus in combination with the incentives and tax credits available in New York State. There is a tax credit available for new construction, which is in a big adjustment now stackable with LIHTC. So I'm sure Atalia and others can speak much more precisely about this, but some important modifications made so that taking advantage of that tax credit did not penalize affordable housing developers in terms of their ability to access other tax credits. And a commercial energy efficiency tax deduction. This is a significantly richer tax deduction with the addition of some prevailing wage, essentially higher incentives for projects that meet prevailing wage requirements, and some provisions that allow a way for non-tax entities to take advantage of some of the benefits of these deductions, essentially by passing along the tax deduction to folks that are involved in providing a project. These tax credits have been authorized for 10 years, so we're talking about a pretty substantial runway. The Congressional Budget Office score is, it's not capped, it's not a finite amount, but it could be less or it could be much more. That's an assumption based on uptake. And so there's a lot of important open questions, I think, for this group, and as we think about policy making, about how to make sure that we maximize the impact of those tax credits. They go into effect on January 1st, and there's a number of efforts just to give this group some visibility into some of the work that's underway, both I think as we think about at the federal level and advocating for clarity and clarification around tax credits, but also around ensuring that the state and local actions are talking about these tax credits in ways that really maximize adoption. One is to provide clarity to homeowners, renters, and contractors and other stakeholders about the tax credits, sort of what products qualify, when they go into effect, how they work, to maximize what we'll just kind of call stackability. So the ability to use these tax credits with rebates that exist within utility incentive programs, et cetera, to conduct robust community education and engagement and outreach. Again, these are not sort of guaranteed investment dollars in the state of New York. And this is some work that's happening at the federal level to maximize clarifications. The law did not specify home ownership around some of the tax credits, specifically around the residential energy efficiency tax credits. And so to ensure that they're clarifying that renters have the ability to access tax credits for portable heat pump units. I know that that's some innovation that's been coming in New York and something that would potentially be of service to a number of New Yorkers. Also, some sort of requests and questions around ensuring that data is being collected and shared about who is getting access to these tax credits and what is coming in terms of product and pricing across the board to ensure that the benefits can be maximized. And yeah, Lisa's calling out, these tax credits are not refundable. I think despite many, some best efforts of, I know some folks on this call, really emphasize this. When we talk about refundability, we're talking about, the people that can take advantage of those tax credits are primarily people that have tax liability. And as we think about both the core equity requirements of New York's climate law, as well as the federal Justice 40 provisions, it becomes even more important that some of the greenhouse gas reduction fund provisions that Dale highlighted earlier, as well as that the rebates that I'll talk about next, that they're really maximizing the benefits to ensure that we're not simply making sort of heat pumps available and incentives available to higher income households. There's two major rebate programs that were authorized in the Inflation Reduction Act. One is a performance-based program. So it essentially it's $159 million allocated to New York over 10 years. And it covers energy efficiency projects, but because of the way that the program essentially measures energy savings and because of the energy efficiency of heat pumps, there are ways in which higher levels of energy savings are going to be achievable through converting to a heat pump. And so there will be a sort of a natural incentive for projects that really want to generate deep savings. So what you can see here is for market rate participants, 50% of the project can be covered up to, there are limits here. So up to $2,000 if your project is expected to achieve a certain percent savings, up to $4,000 if it's expected to go significantly deeper. And there's a little bit of nuance around, whether the project is claiming savings based on sort of a accepted model or whether it's measured savings. So that's a bit wonky. There's more details to come on that. The rebates are available at sort of twice the quantity for folks that I believe are at or below 80% area median income, and up to 80% of the project cost can be covered. So sort of a max benefit of $8,000 with that rebate if accessed by folks below 80% area median income. So the second rebate that many of you have heard about is more of a sort of appliance-based or measure-based rebate. And that is about the same size for New York over a 10-year period. And it covers pre-electrification and electrification measures. So you have measures like a panel upgrade, like electrical wiring with specific subcaps, as well as a $14,000 total project cap. 100% of the project can be covered for folks below 80% area median income, and up to 50% can be covered for folks between 80% and 150% area median income, which is quite broad and introduces the possibility of stacking, for example, with the tax credits that were mentioned earlier. And so this is an area where there's a lot of room for design. And NYCERDA, the state energy agency for any given state, is going to have a huge role in designing these programs to ensure that they are they're sort of working in concert with others. So the timeline for that, the DOE is expected to release additional guidance early next year, after which the window will open for states to submit applications, and there will be presumably comment. And so this will be an opportunity for this group to engage on how those programs are designed and how they work in concert with others. I would just move quickly here. I recognize we have a number of other speakers. One is, in terms of opportunities states are considering, one is around stacking the rebates with existing funds. I think the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the bipartisan infrastructure laws allocation for the Weatherization Assistance Program is also substantial and needs to work in concert if these are going to have sort of maximum impact. Workforce development, this is a huge amount of project work and an increase in these kinds of work, ensuring that they're kind of prioritizing in these programs, reaching low income and affordable housing in a way that really achieves New York's mandates around equitable distribution of funds and communicating to people what these funds are for and how they can be used. And I'll just close with 4 risks that we're highlighting, we want people to be aware of. One of them is the role of fossil fuels. A number of these programs are energy efficiency programs and do have, they could incentivize fossil fuel appliances as a way to achieve energy efficiency. And as we think about particularly the homes rebate, we encourage folks to be really thoughtful about and specific about the places in which, if at all, fossil fuel appliances are being incentivized with these rebate dollars, given New York's climate goals. Health and safety deferrals, I think Dale hit the nail on the head earlier. This is a huge gap in terms of making sure homes can access these rebates. So identifying sources that are going to meet the need on a project level, minimizing market confusion. There's different requirements for each of these programs, WAP, for these rebates, for state programs, and doing the good work at NYCERDA and HCR to align them. And then the last one is this note about sort of boom and bust. If we're trying to build a market, not just for sort of market rate tax credit heat pumps, but also for for income qualified households, we need that to be a sustainable program design that can attract jobs and workforce to really so that the funding doesn't run out. Right.
Awesome, Amar, that was great. I appreciate all that. And I really like the risk framework at the end that kind of helps tee us up for some of the advocacy efforts that we're going to have to be doing going forward. I'm going to turn it over to Atalia Howe, Vice President of Initiatives and Impact Investing at the Community Preservation Corporation, to get into the Climate Friendly Homes Fund. I think I said that right, Atalia?
That's correct, yes.
So you have the floor.
Terrific. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to pull up my slides here. My name is Atalia Howe. As Ibram mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Initiatives and Impact Investing at CPC. For those that aren't familiar with CPC, we are a multifamily affordable housing lender, and we've been very focused on supporting New York State's clean energy goals and decarbonization goals through the loans and investments that we make in affordable housing. So here today, I am excited to talk to you about the Climate Friendly Homes Fund. So just to provide a little bit of background, in 2022, so earlier this year, Governor Hochul announced a $25 billion 5-year housing plan. And as part of that plan, $250 million was allocated to electrify 10,000 units of housing across the state over a 5-year period. So in June of 2022, New York State Homes and Community Renewal, or HCR, and the Housing Trust Fund Corporation, or HTFC, invited eligible applicants with experience in the underwriting, origination, and servicing of construction and permanent loans, as well as some experience with energy retrofits to apply to administer this fund, the Climate Friendly Homes Fund, or the CFHF, via a public notice of funding available. And in September of this year, CPC was selected to administer the program. So just some key goals of the fund: it's $250 million to electrify, as I mentioned, 10,000 units across the state. The goal is really to target energy efficiency and electrification in LMI census tracts and disadvantaged communities. And we can get into some of the specifics there later on. And really a focus of ours as the administrator and through our partnerships is to provide training and really public awareness about the benefits of decarbonization and some of the regulatory changes that are really driving demand for decarbonization and low carbon technology. So it's, to educate owners and operators and tenants about the benefits of electrification and to continue to scale adoption of high performance technologies by funding these early transition efforts. So it's great to see the state really put their money where their mouth is in terms of supporting, again, high performance technologies and electrification in historically disadvantaged communities. So the eligible building owner types, so this is really focused on smaller buildings. So that is buildings between 5 and 50 units. We have negotiated with the state that if there are larger complexes where each building is less than 50 units, but potentially like a garden complex where the total units are above 50 units, those would qualify, those would be eligible buildings. Subsidized and unsubsidized housing is eligible. So either the building has to have a regulatory agreement with HCR or another public entity. If the building or buildings are unsubsidized, they have to be located in a HUD LMI census tract or a disadvantaged community per NYSERDA's definition and the CLCPA definition of a disadvantaged community. On our website, we have a CFHF landing page, and there's a link to this at the end of this deck, which we will make available afterwards. You can actually go in and put in your address and see if it falls into one of those locations if you're unsure. But those are the requirements there. So it is targeting both subsidized and unsubsidized housing. Importantly, this funding only applies to mid-cycle retrofits, so it cannot be combined with traditional mortgage financing. So this is really looking for opportunities for buildings that can't otherwise access capital to make these improvements to be able to electrify major building systems. So to maximize the impact and reach of the program, we have partnered with like-minded green lending institutions, other CDFIs, and community-based nonprofits to help us identify projects and screen for building retrofit opportunities across the state. So we have kind of broken these out into two types of partners. We have our lender partners, so they'll really be assisting with kind of every step of the process until we get to closing. So they'll be doing outreach, originating and screening projects for feasibility, underwriting project costs, and then submitting those applications to CPC for final review and approval. So those partners are Local Initiative Support Coalition or Corporation, or LISC, Enterprise Community Partners, and Inclusive Prosperity Capital. So I imagine those names are familiar to folks on the phone. And then we'll also be partnering with nearly a dozen community partners. So those are really kind of the boots on the ground. They're locally based organizations that will help us perform outreach and originate and pre-screen projects for program participation. So just in terms of the eligible use of funds, so the CFHF will cover all hard costs for systems upgrades and will cover some limited ECMs or energy conservation measures. So the real focus, this is an electrification fund. So that the real focus here is on major system replacement. So switching from gas or oil to high efficiency heat pumps for heating and cooling, as well as domestic hot water where feasible. The funds will also be used to cover engineering and consultant costs, origination fees for our partners, all closing costs and legal fees. It is proposed that the cost share for energy audit and scoping ahead of the loan closing. So, we would hope that, interested owners and developers would share that project cost, or excuse me, the energy audit and scoping cost, but that would be fully reimbursed if the project gets to closing. And that's really just to minimize, having projects kind of receive that energy audit and that integrated physical needs assessment, and then potentially, not be interested in getting to closing, or so it's just a bit of a kind of a risk share, cost share there, but that would be fully refundable once the project does in fact close and start construction. Based on some of our estimates, we're expecting that the estimated funds to cover the hard costs specifically will be between $18,000 and $22,000 a unit. That is just what is available kind of once you net out some of those engineering and consulting costs, the closing costs, legal fees, and so on. So we think that is a reasonable amount to perform this work. But obviously, that money will go a bit further upstate than it will downstate, but all projects, should apply, and then we'll kind of, start to kind of understand what is feasible during that energy audit and scoping. Just to highlight some ineligible use of funds, unfortunately, I've said before, we responded to an RFP. We didn't respond to an RFI, but solar, unfortunately, is not an eligible use of the CHF funds, but we will be working with both CPC and our program partners will be working with participants to identify other incentives and rebates and other sources of capital to cover some of those ineligible scope items. So that is, solar PV, kind of deeper energy efficiency measures outside of kind of those kind of low lift energy conservation measures. And again, just highlighting that this can't be combined with mortgage financing. So just briefly on the structure and terms, these will be committed as 0% interest forgivable loans. Participating buildings, both the regulated and unregulated, will be subject to a restrictive covenant for the term of the loan grant, which is still being negotiated with the state. It will likely be between 5 and 10 years. So all participating buildings will be subject to reporting requirements to maintain compliance with that restrictive covenant. And essentially that's just benchmarking. So we would require 2 years of benchmarking pre-closing. So we'd essentially just ask for utility information that then we'd kind of pass through to the benchmarking provider, and then 3 years post-construction benchmarking. So that's really the reporting requirements there. And then likewise, properties which are sold or moved or kind of demolished or materially altered in any way may would have to be, would have to receive prior consent from the state. Otherwise, it could trigger a repayment of the funding. And that's really just to kind of avoid, owners that might be looking to take advantage of the funds and then kind of quickly flip the units. We don't anticipate that happening, but that is something that the state has communicated would need to be part of that restrictive covenant. If all of those conditions are met, those funds would be 100% forgivable. So these really are acting as grant funds. But again, given the restrictive covenant, they're being structured as 0% interest forgivable loans just to ensure compliance with that restrictive covenant. Just focused on time, I obviously want to allow time for the other speakers in Q&A, so I'm going to kind of move through this quickly. This information is available on the landing page on CPC's website. This is just kind of a brief look at what the application will entail. So we'll be looking kind of at those 3 key criteria. So affordability, does it have a current regulatory agreement, or if not, is it located in one of those geographical, eligible locations? We'll be looking at kind of basic building condition, really just to ensure, again, this is an electrification program. So it really is, we want buildings that are generally otherwise in pretty good condition, just to reduce any kind of, significant increase in operational costs if you're just slapping on a heat pump and not, if a building needs kind of deeper energy efficiency work. So we'll be looking at some of that, the year built, and then just existing debt or financial conditions. And this wouldn't necessarily make buildings ineligible, but we just need to understand, do we need to receive mortgagee consent? Looking at kind of what current debt service coverage ratio is and pre-retrofit, so we have some idea post-retrofit, that that debt service would remain more or less stable. So just looking at process, here, this just highlights kind of the different roles of CPC, our lender partners and our community partners. In terms of originations, will be all hands on deck. The scoping and underwriting will really be CPC and our lender partner, and the scoping will be done, performed by engineer partners. Actually, CPC will be releasing an RFP later today to contract those engineering partners. And we anticipate there'll probably be, half a dozen or so throughout the state, given the units that will need to originate over that period of time. And then there'll be a benchmarking provider on the back end, just to ensure that we're collecting that data and ensuring compliance with the program. So this is the last slide. Progress to date, we've announced the program. We are not formally accepting applications until January. So this is a bit of a soft launch. We will be having an informational webinar on December 12th. So that's this Monday. So if you're interested in learning more, that will be kind of a deeper dive into what I've covered here. And if you have other, if you know folks that might be interested, please invite them to that informational webinar. We can share promotional material after after this. And as I mentioned, we will be releasing that engineering partner RFP later today. And there is a CFHF website landing page on our website. So we'll make sure that you get that link as well. So a lot of information. I think I ran slightly over, but I think I said I was going to be about 5 minutes. I think I was about 10 minutes in the end. So I will wrap it up there.
That's okay. That was fantastic. Really exciting, Atalia. Thank you so much. And we will definitely circulate the info about the webinar coming up on December 12th. And we'll also send around slides and a recording of this. And as I said, questions we don't get to because we are running short on time. We used to do these like for an hour and a half or hour and 15, and we're trying to be really good about keeping it to an hour. But I realize that these are very dense presentations. So last but not least, we have Jessica Azulay, the Executive Director of Alliance for a Green Economy, AGREE, who is going to be talking about the latest in our advocacy efforts to push to expand equitable building decarbonization in New York, and especially talking about this letter that over 200 organizations signed to Governor Hochul that went live today or yesterday. So Jessica, I'll pass it over to you for the latest and how people can get more involved as we continue to build pressure and momentum so that every household has a highly efficient, all-electric home. Jess?
Great. Thank you so much, Betta. And thank you to everybody for joining today. We have so many people on this webinar. It's so exciting. And so I'm going to talk about taking action in New York because we have a growing movement in New York that is fighting to win, getting fossil fuels out of buildings, using heat pumps, induction stoves, and other electric appliances. We are pushing to make weatherization and electrification affordable for everyone. And as part of that, we're pushing to make sure that the electricity that we're going to need to power all these electric appliances is also affordable for everyone. And this year, we're really building off of the commitment that happened earlier this year, where Governor Hochul committed 2 million climate-friendly homes by 2030. It says last year, but it was actually this year. It feels like last year, but it was actually earlier in 2022. And so as we move into the 2023 legislative session and budget time, we're going to be fighting to make that commitment real. So Betta mentioned this big sign-on letter that's really kicking off the work going into the 2023 legislative session. It's a letter that has been signed by over 200 organizations and counting that lays out a platform for how to electrify buildings in a way that is equitable and affordable for everyone. And so at the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you how your organization can sign this letter and how you as an individual can get involved. So just some of the things that are in this letter. So first of all, getting fossil fuels out of buildings. Part of the policy platform is a few pieces of legislation that help do this. One is legislation to require all electric new construction. Last year was introduced the All Electric Building Act. So I've got bill numbers here on the slides. Folks can go look at these bills. They're going to hopefully be reintroduced this year. They may have slightly different names. They may have slightly different content, but you can look at the bills from the previous legislative session to get a sense of them. So we're fighting to make sure that new construction is built without fossil fuels in it. We are also working toward neighborhood scale transitions, getting our utilities, our gas utilities engaged and involved in thinking through when they're thinking about spending money on new gas infrastructure or replacing gas infrastructure and expanding their system. We need them to be investing in electrification instead. And so last year we had the Gas Transition and Affordable Energy Act, which really set forth how to do that. It would stop the incentives for gas expansion. It would remove legal barriers that would allow utilities to avoid fossil fuel infrastructure investments instead of doing electrification. And so, we're hoping to push that bill again, or a version of that bill again, this next session. And then we have also included the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act, which will ensure that disadvantaged communities get their fair share of the energy efficiency funds to make sure that the people that need it the most are able to save on their energy bills by weatherizing their homes and adopting energy efficient appliances. And then how are we making all of this electrification and weatherization affordable for everyone? And we have some big budget asks to make in the upcoming session. We're going to be calling for a Green Affordable Pre-Electrification Fund, or GAP fund. I think Dale and Amar touched on this need to remove hazards from buildings like lead, mold, asbestos, to deal with structural upgrades like a roof that needs repair or a foundation that needs repair. There's all these things, that investments that we need to make in buildings to get them to a point where they can weatherize and electrify. And the funding for that is not provided in a lot of cases by other programs. So this fund would cover all of those gaps. And this is going to be a big priority for us this year. We're also going to be fighting for affordable financing, because we want to incentivize and provide rebates as much as possible. But we also know that households struggle with the upfront costs of doing electrification and weatherization, and we want to make sure that the financing is available and that it's 0% or low interest loans are there. And then to help people access the Green Affordable Pre-Electrification Fund and all the IRA funds and all the funds that NYCERDA has and other agencies have, we want to make a big investment in the NYCERDA's regional clean energy hubs to make sure that there are more people on the ground who are trained up and able to help people connect to all of this money. And then last but not least, we need to make sure that the electricity that powers all of this is affordable. And so we've been working with consumer advocates in New York to figure out how to do that and to ensure that our utility bills are affordable, especially for low and moderate income customers. So New York already has bill assistance for low income customers, but unfortunately, that assistance does not reach all low income customers. It reaches maybe about half of low income customers. So we need to get more low income customers enrolled in those utility programs. So there's some legislation to do that. We also know that those programs, especially if we can enroll everybody, are underfunded. So we need to make a big budget ask to make sure that those programs are fully funded so that all low income people can get enough bill assistance so that their energy bills are no more than 6% of their income. And then we're also pushing for improving access to the federal energy bill assistance through HEAP. So this is, a multi-pronged platform to ensure that we have the legal framework and policy framework in place to make sure that we're moving toward electrification and weatherization, to make sure that everyone can afford these solutions, and to make sure that the electricity that will power all of this is also affordable. And we hope that you will join us in this big effort that we'll be making. As Betta mentioned, over 200 organizations have signed on to this platform, and your organization can too. Bryn will be putting a link in the chat to a place where we have the letter up on the web and where you can sign your organization on. You can also go there and sign on as an individual. And then through our Renewable Heat Now coalition, we have been forming regional advocacy teams, and we invite all of you to join your regional advocacy team. These teams will be talking to local elected officials. They will be talking to their neighbors. They will be talking to their community, getting people engaged in this work. And it's wonderful people all across the state that are getting involved in this. And there's a link for how to sign up to one of those teams. And with that, I will end.
Thank you, Jessica. That was fantastic. You covered so much, as did all of our speakers, and we only have a short amount of time left, but we'll do our best here. Ibrahim, do you want to start with a question from the audience?
I do. The one question, the advocacy and implementation front, what role do the utilities play? I'm not sure if this question was answered in the chat. I know there's been a lot of excellent chatter in the chat. In accelerating or delaying implementation, how can we advocate for the former as opposed to the latter?
So that's the question that probably, anybody on this
Jessica,
panel.
do you want to just tell
Yeah.
more detail about the Gas Transition Act, whatever the current name is?
Sure.
That's
So,
foundational.
yeah, I think that we really need to push the utilities, and many of us have been pushing the utilities to stop putting our money into gas infrastructure and start putting our money into the solutions that we know that we need. And there are some barriers in the public service law that kind of make it harder for them to do that. So one is the 100-foot rule, which requires anybody within 100 feet of the gas system can get a free gas hookup. And RMI just helped us do a great analysis of that. And it's about $1 billion every 5 years that we're spending on hooking new people up to the gas system and going in the wrong direction. So the gas transition bill would remedy that.
There's been a lot of effort in governments and agencies to really to push that. So that's a really great point. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then, we have this opportunity where, as pipelines get to the end of their life, we could think about not building a new pipeline and instead electrifying an entire neighborhood. And in order to do that, we need to address another piece of public service law, which is the obligation to serve. And so what the gas transition bill will do is it will remove these barriers in public service law, protect customers as we go through this transition, ensure that people have affordable access to energy by hitting that 6% energy burden target, and make sure that the Public Service Commission is really pushing utilities to plan along these lines.
Okay, great. I think that covered it all. At least a good start. So we have like 1 more minute left. And I know that our speakers have been doing a great job answering questions in the chat, which I really appreciate. And we will circulate all of these after and get to questions that haven't been answered. So I'm not sure with the 1 minute remaining, does anyone, Dale, were there any questions since you were our first speaker that you feel like we didn't get to, or anything else that you we want to circle back to?
Well, the only thing that I don't think we talked about as much as we should is the New York Green Bank. I mean, the New York Green Bank has $1 billion from ARA, the Obama era federal funding for this. And I think we'd be hard pressed to find one of those dollars in a disadvantaged community. So I think part of the mission for this group is to overhaul what the New York Green Bank is doing if they're going to play a role distributing these funds. And NYCERDA has submitted comments to EPA on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which people should review and give NYCERDA some feedback on those. And they include reference to the New York Green Bank.
You would think that the revenue that they've gotten from proving it, now we could just put back into disadvantaged communities, theoretically. Yeah.
And we can circulate a link to that and encourage people to provide comments and feedback. And we did include a call out in last year's letter to Governor Hochul about the Green Bank, and specifically using, I think, half of the Green Bank's $1 billion to go towards building decarbonization for disadvantaged communities and low-income households. But now here we are, it's 1:01. So I don't want to keep people. Do any of our speakers have anything else like burning that they wanted to get to? I don't want to take up more of your time when I know everybody's very busy, especially this time of year. But want to give our speakers an opportunity for any last words.
Just to make sure that people know that they will get the recording, right? Just reiterate that, maybe.
Of course, yes, we will circulate the recording, the slides, the link to the webinar that Atalia mentioned on December 12th, and ways to take action that Jessica highlighted. So we'll do that follow up and would be eager to, work with all of you in your communities to identify projects and keep pushing on the advocacy front. But in the meantime, and I see Bill, you had your hand raised. We always like it when we get at least one live question. So maybe we can do that.
Okay, I'll be real quick.
Okay.
I'm part of the Clean Energy Hub in the Capital District. Some of you know me, most of you I don't think do. I used to be at NYCP. But the issue I want to raise, which might have been implicitly covered by that onrush of slides that we got early on, is workforce development and the lack of capacity to perform these services, the heat pump, whether it's the manufacturing, the install. I've been involved with solar. I'm director of Solarize Albany, so I'm kind of focused on the solar side. But I feel like there's a real issue that the hubs are going to be struggling with, which is to be responsive to the constituents who we, get enrolled, to get services done quickly when the Heat Smart campaign here in the Capital District has been struggling to get efficient delivery of services to people in a timely way. And I feel like with all this money that was kind of the focus today, the elephant in the room is how do we train people and how do we get the infrastructure in place to actually deliver all of this in a timely way? To me, that's a critical path issue right now.
That's great.
Yep, very important point, Bill, and one that we definitely need to tackle as a movement and as a community of advocates here and practitioners. And we are planning some clean energy careers summits. We're just beginning the planning now. Would love to talk to you about possibly hosting one in the Capital Region. So let's be in touch about that. And hopefully we can do another online teach-in focused on that as we have in the past. But I agree that is an incredibly important challenge that we're facing, and we need to scale up the workforce. Manna, I see your hand up, so not to be a hog of people's time, but of course, I want to hear from you and what's on your mind.
I know it's really late, but I just wanted Bill to know that I was able to get $400,000 for low-income energy retrofits, and it's a partnership between Communities for Local Power and RUPCO to do repairs and to do a deep energy retrofit as a job training program. And also we'll do a before and after study, so we have some real results. And if you want to know more about it, send me an email and I'll try to write something up that Betta can share. Sorry for being last to stick my 2 cents in.
Thank you. I will, Manna.
That's great. No need to apologize. Love that you shared that. And that's really exciting. And those are the type of initiatives that I think we all want to hear about. We want to see those type of initiatives happening across the state. So thank you for your leadership as always, Manna.
Yeah, it was ARPA money with the thought that if the program is successful, we'll be able to get IRA and other Bond Act monies moving forward.
Wonderful. And now we're going to be getting, even more federal money, as we heard, so we can keep scaling up, these types of projects and programs. But we need the advocacy to do it right and to make sure that New York is as well positioned as possible to maximize these resources. So stay tuned, more to come. Thank you all so much for being here. Amazing speakers and questions, and shout out to Melissa and Bryn at NYCP for holding down the back end here. Really appreciate all of you and the incredible progress we're making, and looking forward to continuing to build together for better buildings, for decarbonized buildings in 2023 and beyond. So thanks so much. Wishing all of you a great holiday season and happy end of 2022.